My name is Victor Kipiani. I'm the chairman for Tbilisi-based think tank Geocase. It's my special pleasure to welcome a very honorable guest, Mr. Thomas Mühlmann, who is the ambassador extraordinary plenipotentiary of the Republic of Austria to Georgia. Your Excellency, thank you so much for your time to agree to this conversation, and welcome to Geocase and welcome to the wider audience.
Malaba.
Thank you. It's a double pleasure to host the ambassador of the Republic of Austria, especially in the aftermath of the very recent visit by the Chancellor of Austria to Georgia. The visit which was widely covered in the local media and in Austrian media, I believe. The Prime Minister of Georgia, Mr. Garibashvili, hailed this visit as the historic one, which opened new venues or new opportunities for increasing the bilateral ties. So much has been written, Your Excellency, much has been discussed on the Georgian side, but definitely your take, with your insight, your impressions, your sort of assessment as of the diplomat of that meeting would be very much helpful. So let's start, with your overview of that really very meaningful, very important meeting. Then we'll follow up with 2 or 3 questions maximum, and we'll close our session in 30-35 minutes. So thank you so much indeed, and pleasure having you.
No, thanks for welcoming me. You mentioned it was a historic visit, or at least Prime Minister Garibashvili mentioned that. I would say yes, it was a historic visit because of various vectors. One is it was the very first visit of an Austrian Chancellor in Georgia. We never had this before. Secondly, it was the first visit of an Austrian member of government after Georgia was granted the European perspective. So that was another important element. And third, I think we have to see that a bit in a sequence, because we had a lot of high-level meetings and contacts over the last few years, and this is just one of the highlights now. We had I might remember that President Zurabishvili was in Vienna in October 2021. My minister, Minister Schallenberg, was here in Georgia in June 2022, where he was here together with his colleagues from Romania and Lithuania. And last September, we also hosted a delegation of the Austrian Parliament. So if you look at that, I think it's an accumulation of visits, which shows the increased interest of Austria also into this region here. And I can also say that we are planning already on a visit of our Speaker of Parliament rather sooner than later. So I think then we really have had quite a series of visits. So what was, why did our Chancellor come? I would say there are at least 3 main messages that he brought. Number one is it was a historic decision by the European Council to grant the European perspective to Georgia. He came here to listen to the Prime Minister on the works that are ongoing in relation to the 12 conditions that the EU put, and he expressed his absolute support for the EU rapprochement of Georgia. And he did not say that only politically, but he also mentioned quite a number of practical tools and activities that we're doing in order to help Georgia to line itself more to the European Union. So that was the first thing. The second thing is important element is we all know that February last year changed the world upside down, basically. So, of course, the war, the Russian aggression, the Russian war in Ukraine was a topic of discussions. And in the context, you might have heard also that the Federal Chancellor in his press statement talked about the financial sanctions and his appreciation that Georgia makes sure that the sanctions are not circumvented on Georgian territory. But, and this is my third element, I think it was also a we have not forgotten what happened in Georgia, that we know that Georgian territory, and he explicitly wanted to go and see the Otisi crossing point in order to see with his own eyes what it means that a country is partially occupied by Russian troops, and what are the effects of the effects for the people, to the daily lives of the people. And I think he got a very good impression, and I have to say it was very consensual. The discussions were friendly, and I think my chancellor left Georgia with a much better impression of where Georgia stands, of the challenges of Georgia in relation to its geography, in relation to its specificities, like I mentioned, the conflicts with Abkhazia and South Ossetia and the Russian troops there. And he promised that he would help bringing this perspective also to the table in Brussels to foster the understanding of the particularities of Georgia.
Indeed, that is, yes, you pointed out, Your Excellency, it's a very much highly timely visit of the Austrian Chancellor. And again, to express the appreciation of all of us for that unwavering support, especially in this volatile time when there's so many challenges in the region. And those challenges really put us all on the same page in terms of uniting our efforts to tackle those challenges, to overcome the obstacles, and to strive for a better world, to lay down foundations for a relatively long-term and stable peace and prosperity in the Europe. And I think that in that sense, whether you are the fully fledged member of the European Union or you are the country who is aspiring to become the member of the European Union, uniting those efforts, of course, matter, because this produces some combined effects. And also, I should necessarily mention that you've been witnessing that visit yourself and participating. That what was helpful, Your Excellency, is a very warm and sort of friendly, personal relations or interaction between our Prime Minister and your Chancellor, which in this world of the common politics, it matters a lot. So again, to emphasize those points and thanking you and you in the first place, because I imagine how much work you have done in the preparation for those visits. So with your permission, if we go just with several issues to highlight, in addition to getting that very much support for territorial integrity of Georgia and political support in terms of Georgia getting the candidacy status and increasing its ties on this path for European integration. Let's touch on a bit on the economy side, because as I read in the media, the parties have discussed various ways of cooperation, whether it comes down to tourism, agriculture, various other means. I also know that an advisor to the Chancellor, Mr. Georg Adler, has met with His Excellency, the Minister of Economy, Mr. Davitashvili. Would you please elaborate a bit more on those contacts and what we are to expect in the near term?
Well, let me start by saying that if you look at the economic figures, then what we have seen in essence over the last year is a steady increase of our economic relations. Obviously, there was a big dip due to the COVID crisis, but we are trying to catch up now. The problem is a bit that it is very much project oriented still, yeah. So it's a bit of up and down, but the trend is going upwards. Yeah, and I think it is very good that the two prime ministers discussed this in more detail. Obviously, we cannot substitute for the businesses to meet each other, but what we can do is to create an atmosphere in which companies feel more comfortable to work together. Yes. And I think also the war in Ukraine has changed these relations to a certain degree, because you know that our companies were very strong in Eastern Europe. They were investing in Russia, and with this Russian aggression against Ukraine, things have changed a lot, and now they're looking for new markets. And Georgia is definitely one of these aspects. Secondly, what we have seen with the COVID crisis is all these supply chains have suffered. So companies are looking for new supply chains, for shorter transport routes and all that. So Georgia is perfectly placed in this. So I think we have, for instance, we are already engaged in the logistics sector with Austrian companies. They intend to invest more here because they see Georgia as a hub. So that is one area. The other area is clearly, not least because we have a similar topography and similar economic structure, is the whole tourism and the tourism infrastructure area. This is what the two prime ministers also discussed. Yeah, we're trying to help Georgia to build up its tourism sector, both in terms of hospitality, hospitality and offers for tourists, as well as touristic infrastructure. Yeah, we have, for instance, Doppelmayr. Everybody knows this company probably, with the chairlifts and the cable cars that have invested a lot in the ski resorts in Georgia, but also investing here in Tbilisi. So this is a natural areas of cooperation. Also, our Austrian Development Corporation is rather strong here in Georgia, trying to help both the agricultural sector, but also the sustainable tourism, in particular in the mountainous areas. So these are all aspects where we can basically be very happy with the developments, and where we can discuss further investments, further cooperation. In addition, we are, of course, we have certain brands here and certain companies that have invested here. For instance, the Rauch company has invested in a huge plant for fruit juices that are basically putting Georgia on the map as a distribution hub into Central Asia and other areas. Yeah, so there is potential, and I know of a couple of investments that are upcoming. And I'm sure that with these ties that were created between the two prime ministers, but also, as you mentioned, with Deputy Prime Minister Davitashvili, that things will start moving, and companies will be encouraged. We will follow up on that. We have in our embassy also a trade section. They do regularly organize business missions. The next such business mission is planned for May, where we bring Austrian companies to Georgia to link them up with their counterparts. And the focus is there very much on the B2B meetings, very concrete cooperation. And with that one, we will hopefully deepen our economic relations as well.
Yeah, it's true, Your Excellency. Yeah, it's true. And you mentioned the redesign of the supply chains. You mentioned that opportunity of bringing industries, as we read this days, closer to the home bases. And Georgia becomes really, and could become potentially really, the focal point if we take into consideration large-scale projects such as a Middle Corridor or Black Sea Cable. And in that respect, I fully subscribe to your word, Ambassador, that Austria, which stands for the quality, this is one point. And the second point, who has a huge experience in terms of working in this area which is the Eastern Europe, and knows, feels the cultural perceptions, that really puts Austrian businesses in a very unique position in having an upper hand and competitive advantage. And I fully subscribe to what you said, and the mission which you mentioned, the business mission, which is due for May this year, it would be very much on the agenda. So we hope that that would be more substance brought into. The next question, Your Excellency, which is about the candidacy status. We're all aware that by fall of this year, we have to expect a decision by on granting the status to Georgia. We just received a response on the questionnaire on the sectoral reforms, which provides for some sort of sense of optimism. And if correct me if wrong, the Chancellor has stated that all countries have to have equal conditions for applying for candidacy. As we all appreciate, this became quite a thorny issue, because when Ukraine was granting the status of the candidacy, Moldova had been quite a disappointment, to be honest. On the Georgian side, this yourself, you feel those perceptions or misperceptions on the ground. What could you comment in that respect, and what would be your message, if I may phrase in this word, to the Georgian audience, especially after that very important political and moral support which we have received from the Chancellor?
Well, let me maybe start by saying, once again, it was an absolute historic decision that the European Council took in June. And we all know that the government intended to hand in its membership application in 2024 because of reasons that we all know that was put forward. And it is, people should not underestimate what the European Union has done, because any step in the enlargement process needs full agreement by all member states. Now, we had already at 2 occasions the European Council agreeing in consensus on Georgia's membership application. First, to accept it and hand it over for an opinion to the European Commission. And then in June, based on the Commission report, providing a European perspective. This is absolutely historic. And this is, I'm always saying, this is light speed. Yeah? Other countries have waited much, much, much longer. So I think this is something you can be proud of. And as it has been said often enough, for 30 years, you were discussing basically with the European Union whether you are a part of Europe or not. This question is answered. Yeah, it is now really answered. The European Union has given a very clear message, and now it's entirely on your shoulders to move forward on this path. Now, it is totally normal for the European Union to give conditions. So you are not alone on this European integration path. No worries. The European Commission, the member states, they will guide you. You have now 12 conditions. Then there will be a decision on the next steps. There will be further conditions in the future. So we will accompany this process. But the important thing is, things need to be done by Georgia. It's not the partners that will do it for you. It's your generational choice to strive for this European rapprochement. This is a very important message, I think I need to say. The Chancellor, as you rightly mentioned, basically all need to be treated the same. There is no shortcut. That's basically what he said. What is behind that is basically that there are a number of other member states, a number of other countries that are aspiring membership, in particular in the Western Balkans. And for us, Austria, it's very important that we do not lose sight also of their ambitions. So
I agree.
yes, to the three: Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. But let's not forget that there are a number of other countries that are already in the pipeline, and that we must not forget now in this. Now, you mentioned a certain disappointment. Yes, I understand that there's a certain disappointment. There are certain reasons for that, but there's no reason to give up. I mean, there were other enlargement processes where a country was maybe at first, at the beginning, a bit behind the other ones. But if you set up a process rightly, if you have national consensus, if you move forward jointly, because it's a huge task, yeah, to prepare Georgia for EU membership, you can catch up easily. And that particular country I'm having in mind was behind, but then joined with everybody else and was actually one of the front runners then. Yeah. So I think it's important for Georgia to grab the opportunity to stand together, all political forces, to work in this direction. It will require difficult reforms, but it's worth it. I can tell you. I mean, if you look. I mean, we have a certain skepticism of the European vis-a-vis the European Union in Austria as well, yeah, because you have a lot of populism and all this. But imagine Austria without the European Union. Where would we be, for instance, economically? We have gained so much by our EU membership that people can't even imagine. Yeah, so it's worth it. But it's a tough process, but you're not alone. We're here to help you.
Absolutely. This is very important message which you gave, which I would rather split into two sub-messages. Definitely, it's our homework, and we have to do our portion of our home exercise homework. And for those who have felt disappointed as a result of the former decision, we really have a unique chance, if I can put myself in this way, to make those feel guilty for taking that decision and to prove our resilience. This is a litmus test for us to show once again, to demonstrate unconditionally and irrevocably our capabilities. And it's also important, Ambassador, what you said twice or three times, so that on this way we're not alone. We would be guided, we would be accompanied, we would be supported, we would be navigated by countries like Austria. That's important. And so I think, we're not the lone wolf on this path, and having the partner like you on this path is really very important. And as I'm saying, it's a civilizational choice. And if you're committed to civilizational choice, you have to go through the setbacks and keep carrying on. So thank you again, for reminding the audience, all of us, of those very subtle and very important aspects. And the next, the pre-final issue, just to increase the intrigue in our conversation. Another notes which the Chancellor has made and which has been frequently quoted in Georgia media, he mentioned the art of opportunity in the politics, and he also added that Georgia is moving into the corridor of those opportunities, as if implying that the reality of regional politics has to be taken into account. There have been various interpretations, Your Excellency, been given to the phrase, whether that's a sort of reincarnation of real politics, what actually the Chancellor meant in terms of the Georgia's peculiar stance in the context of the war in Ukraine. We know all those discussions about giving up or rejecting the bilateral sanctions, keeping the trade with Russia, etc., etc. I think that you are much more competent than me on expanding what was meant behind that very enigmatic statement by the Chancellor. Thank you.
Well, I will not even dare to interpret what my Chancellor wants to say, but I think
that's very wise of you.
Let me expand a bit on that one. I mean, what we see in Ukraine is really an attack on our security architecture, on what we have, the peace dividend that we have thought that we had gained since the 90s. it's an attack on our values in all this. And the European Union took a very, very clear stance in support of Ukraine in this.
Sure.
And one particular element are the sanctions. So we have imposed a number of packages of sanctions against Russia, and in which we want to basically we have sanctions against individuals, but also against certain sectors, in order to weaken for instance, the industry that provides weapons and all that. So for us, it is important that we all stand united. Yeah? Georgia made a clear choice. You said, for you, the Euro integration is the way to go. 85% of the Georgian population wants Georgia to go this way. I know that the Georgian population is very much in sympathy with the Ukrainian population. There are a lot of initiatives to support Ukraine in humanitarian aid and so on. And this is all something which I value very, very highly. Yeah? I think this is outstanding how the population is basically siding with Ukraine on this. For us, it is important that the sanctions are not circumvented. Now, I understand the position of the government, and this is something what the European Union has also accepted. But what we want to make sure is that the sanctions are not circumvented. You know, there are always business opportunities. Yeah, there are always people that win from war. And what we want to avoid is that what we want Georgia to do is to be very vigilant that these sanctions are not circumvented. And as my Chancellor was saying, and now I'm going back to quote him, that he was in particular mentioning also the financial sanctions, and he basically thanked Prime Minister Ivanishvili for confirming that these sanctions are not that the government does all in order to avoid these sanctions to be circumvented on Georgian territory.
I agree. This is really very important clarification, which you made, Your Excellency, that no one is, of course, precluded from trade, except for those instances when that should be based on the legality basis, on transparency basis, and either international commitments or bilateral commitments any country takes on its shoulders should be preserved, and should be preserved in a very honest and diligent way. So thank you again for bringing clarity into that issue, because again, you know, that visit was extremely not just important, but left, you know, an ample room for thoughts and discussions, and which is normal, which means that visit was not just because of the protocol. It was really a substance which the Austrians put into that visit, and the substance by which Georgians have also responded. So the final question, Your Excellency, we mentioned the business mission in May this year. But is it possible for you to tell us about any scheduled or possible visits by high-ranking officials of Austria to Georgia, so to show us the possible trajectory throughout this year in terms of increasing, promoting our ties?
Well, I'm a bit reluctant to talk about timetables and so on, because, you know, they never hold. But as I told you, we plan a business mission that will probably take place in May. And then still, hopefully, in the first half of this year, we foresee a visit of our Speaker of Parliament, which is important because we also want to engage more on the parliamentary cooperation. As I mentioned in my introductory statement, we had the Parliamentary Friendship Group of the Austrian Parliament here in Georgia in September. They had very good meetings with the Speaker, with other people, with their counterparts. And if the Speaker comes now, then there is a very good opportunity to take stock of what has been achieved and what we want to do together.
Yes, and by the way, thanks to you, I had an opportunity and pleasure and privilege to meet the members of the Parliament. So that I completely agree with you. That was very insightful. discussions which we had. So thank you so much.
Yeah, this again another sign of interest. Yeah, that also the Austrian Parliament is very much interested in expanding. Only yesterday, I had a discussion with somebody from the parliamentary administration in Vienna to prepare some substantial outcome for the visit of the speaker that we will hopefully have then. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent, very promising, very encouraging. So, Your Excellency, let me thank you indeed for your time. Let me thank you for your inputs. We were closing this session right in the 30 minutes, as we promised the audience, which means that Georgia is fit for EU candidacy. We say, we promise, we keep the word, we keep the promise, we keep the timeline. So thank you so much indeed. My appreciation on behalf of GeoKeys for you accepting our invitation, and hopefully the audience have received some extra information based on your knowledge, on your insights. So thank you so much and have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.